Today, on the HopeFilled Financial Podcast, I'm going to start by telling a story about me and my brother Jordan, and how we approached grades in college very differently. Our budget tip is about tracking retirement early. Our question of the day goes back to episode 37. There were a few comments about how I calculated my safe withdrawal rate in the example when I talked about Dave Ramsey's most dangerous advice. And lastly, for our main topic, we're going to be talking about how much you need to save for retirement. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe if retirement is a topic that you enjoy. Good morning and welcome to the HopeFilled Financial Podcast. My name is Jay Disberger, your one and only HopeFilled Financial Coach, and I'm happy that you're here with us today. Now, when I was in school, I really didn't like to be at risk of losing my 4.0 GPA. In other words, I didn't want to put my grades at undue risk. I wanted to work as hard as I could and do everything I could so that later on in the semester when finals start recalling stuff that span the entire academic semester or even the entire academic year, I could relax a little bit because I could get a very poor grade on the final exam or the final project, whatever it might be, and still pass with an A. I wanted to put as much upfront work as I could. I wanted to do my absolute best in the beginning so that later on getting the A would be easy. And even then, I would still put my best foot forward so that I could do the absolute best that I possibly could. Now, the benefit to my approach was it was low risk for my grade. The other benefit is finals week was relatively low stress. I actually caught up on my sleep during finals week. The trade-off to my low-risk approach to grades is I didn't have a lot of time to do other things other than just focus on my academics. I was effectively trading a great deal of time to reduce risk to my academic future. Now, my brother Jordan had a very different approach. Jordan wanted to get the same grades as me. For a while, he was trying to see if he could outdo me, if I would be the first one to get a B before he did. He wanted to outdo my grades with the least amount of work. He wanted to get the lowest A possible at Kansas State University. An A is an A. It doesn't matter if you get an A-, it doesn't matter if you get an A+, no such thing. An A is an A no matter what. So Jordan saw getting an extremely high grade on the A scale a waste of time when you could just target as close to the A-B line as possible and eke by with the A. That way you could be more efficient with the effort that you put forward and not burn any more time nor calories than is necessary to get the grade. The trade-off is going to be that by trying to trim that line as close as possible, you're going to be sitting really close to that line come finals week, and you're going to need to hit your final exams and final projects as close to that line as possible, if that was the goal. And in my opinion, that sounds like finals week would be much more stressful. I think it would actually put my grade at a great deal more risk if I didn't want to lose a 4.0. Now, whether or not the increased stress bothered Jordan or not, it didn't matter. That was the way that he approached it. So there were two different ways to approach grades. One, a great deal more upfront investment in order to reduce risk. And the other, my brother Jordan's approach, an extreme effort for an efficiency that could lead to what I would describe as undue stress for my personality. Let me know in the comments which way you approached your grades when you were in school. Now it's time for today's budget tip. Today's budget tip is to track your retirement early. Start now if you can. And the reason is, if you do the math on how much you need for retirement today, you're going to be maximizing the earning potential of the dollars that you can invest. You're going to inspire yourself to start investing or invest more if you keep tracking as soon as possible. The earlier you save, the more powerful every dollar that you invest becomes. For example, if you are 25 years old and you save $1 at age 65, that dollar is going to probably be worth at least $60 in tomorrow's money. Conversely, if you invested $1 at age 45, at age 65, that dollar only becomes $8 in tomorrow's money using the same assumed growth. And conversely, if you are a newborn and your parents invested $1 for you, by the time you turn 65, that dollar has the potential to become $850 in tomorrow's money. If you take the power of compound interest and bat it up against as much time as you have before retirement, you're going to be able to maximize the nest egg in your hope-filled financial future. When it comes to investing, it's better to approach the topic sooner than later. Now it's time to answer a question submitted by you. Today's listener question is less of a listener question and more of my response to the comments that we got on episode 37. Episode 37 is when I covered Dave Ramsey's most dangerous advice when it came to safe withdrawal rates, and there were a number of comments that expressed some confusion as to how a safe withdrawal rate percentage gets applied mathematically to a retirement strategy. For example, Kleindropper commented this: "Your sheets are wrong. It's impossible to get a negative number if growth is 10% and your withdrawal rate is 8. For example, an 8% withdrawal from a $550,000 nest egg is $44K, not $92.7K. I did make an effort in the comments to explain this better, and the response I got was being called silly. So I'm going to do my best to clarify things here in case it was confusing for you as well. In the original Trinity study from the 1990s, the 4% rule that's cited from there is 4% of the initial nest egg value. So if you retired with $1 million, 4% would be $40,000. Now the next year would not be 4% of the nest egg's value that year. It would be $40,000 corrected for inflation on through retirement. The idea of the safe withdrawal rate that was presented in the Trinity study was a withdrawal rate based on your initial nest egg value. If you were to maintain that particular income, that distribution's buying power throughout the rest of retirement. That's not to say that 4% is the running amount that you pull every year from the balance of the nest egg relative to the running balance of the nest egg. If you did that, running out of money would not be the primary concern of anybody's study, because taking 4% of a running balance is never going to drive you into zero. What it's going to do is give you a very volatile, depending on your portfolio, a very volatile income throughout retirement, and possibly trend your buying power downward so that your retirement income that's generated from your nest egg gives you less and less and less. Now here, as we are doing a running nest egg relative withdrawal rate, and I want to show you what that does, the smooth curve looks like everything increases gently over time. But in reality, we have volatile wiggles. So you'll see income starts, again, at $40,000 for the initial $1 million in 2002. It goes up as the market goes up early on, but then in 2006, things take a dip, and you'll see that the income in 2010 on the spreadsheet here drops down below $40,000, and that's not corrected for inflation. So you're a few years into retirement now, 8 years into retirement, and your nominal income is about the same as where you started. This means that if you correct for inflation, your buying power is significantly diminished. And the trend continues on the spreadsheet to show, again, volatile income. But on the whole, using a 4% safe withdrawal rate that's relative to the running nest egg will give you similar ending nest egg results to using an initial 4% and correcting for inflation over time. This is because 4% is relatively conservative and does not put a major impact on the particular portfolio here that we're pulling from, the index fund we're pulling from. If we were to up it to 8%, we'll see there's a much more significant impact. Early on, you might be making 6 figures after the market goes up a little bit, but when the market drops, your income gets cut almost in half from its previous high. And it stays low, it stays suppressed. It doesn't get as high as when we had 4%. When we used a 4% withdrawal rate, your ending nominal income in 2022 for retirement was $95,000. When we use 8%, it's $85,000. Let's try going a little crazier with 10%. When I put 10% in the spreadsheet, we see that we're really truly cut in half from the high in 2010. We go from $122,000 at the peak all the way down to $62,000 some dollars at the bottom of the trough. And the nest egg really doesn't recover. So if we have a safe withdrawal rate that's relative to the running nest egg value and we make it too aggressive as opposed to conservative, we end up with a withdrawal strategy that diminishes the overall nest egg. Here we end with, less than $600,000 in the nest egg, not correcting for inflation. So we're chewing into the golden goose that lays the eggs when we use this strategy. We're dealing with volatile income, and it's an approach that was not reflective of the example I wanted to give. The purpose of the example I showed in episode 37 was to show that sequence risk and volatility risk exist, and you can't just use a smoothed curve to simulate your withdrawal strategy in retirement. I hope that clears things up on how the math works for the safe withdrawal rate strategy that has been cited in past episodes. Now it's time for today's main topic. For today's main topic, I want to answer the question, how do you actually figure out how much you need to be saving for retirement today? What I'm about ready to share with you is not a hard and fast rule, and it's not financial advice. It's the way that I have figured out how much I need to be saving and how I continue to track how much I need to be saving in order to retire with dignity. To get this example started, let's say that you go and you look at your investments, or I go and I look at my investments and I say, well, my average return is around 10.5% annualized. It's important that the return that I'm looking at is annualized. Using a simple average is going to be inappropriate for the accumulation phase projection that we're about ready to do. If you're looking at a prospectus, what you have is indeed the annualized average, and I take the 10-year if it's there, or 5-year if that's the longest that they've got. I take that annualized average, and let's, for the example, say it's 10.5%, and I subtract the expense ratio. Let's say the expense ratio that I can find on the prospectus average in my portfolio is 0.5%. An expense ratio is the percentage of what you have invested that gets charged every year from you in order to manage the fund. An expense ratio can range from being incredibly low to all the way up to, I think, 2% for some of the most actively managed funds, but 0.5% is relatively realistic here. So to get our net growth, we're going to take 10.5% minus the 0.5% and get 10%. Now that's not corrected for inflation yet. If we're going to correct this value for inflation, we have to subtract average inflation, and average inflation is going to be somewhere around 3 to 4%-ish. So that the numbers are clean, I'm going to say 3. That gives us a net inflation corrected growth for our investments of 7%. With this number in mind, we're going to table it and think about our safe withdrawal rate strategy. For this particular example, I'm going to use a 5% default safe withdrawal rate with a financial guardrail of 3% for the withdrawal rate. The financial guardrail will be triggered if the nest egg ever drops below its initial buying power anytime in retirement. This isn't an endorsement of these exact numbers, this is just for the example, and then it's an example that I find relatively appealing myself. Now let's take our safe withdrawal rate strategy and use it to calculate how much we need in our nest egg when we retire. Remember, the safe withdrawal rate percentage is relative to your initial nest eggs value when you retire. That means if we know how much we roughly need to have in retirement, we can use that 5% safe withdrawal rate to calculate the size of the nest egg we need. We probably don't need to replace the full of our income when we're in retirement, as some of our responsibilities have diminished over time, but it's possible that we might want to increase our income when we're in retirement because we want to do a lot more traveling, and some of our retirement dreams involve spending more money than we ever have before. It's going to be specific to you. For this example, let's say that we want $60,000 of income in retirement in today's money. So we take $60,000, divide that by 0.05, and that will yield $1.2 million for the nest egg that would be required for a 5% safe withdrawal rate, resulting in a $60,000 a year income through retirement. But we're not done yet. Remember, we're using a financial guardrail of 3%. The financial guardrail will kick in if the nest egg drops below its initial buying power, as I said before. And in that case, when we take the 3%, that would be 3% of the initial nest egg value corrected for inflation for the given year that we have to default down to that line. So I want to make sure that if I have to default to a 3% safe withdrawal rate during a downturn, a market downturn, in order to let my nest egg recover while the markets recover, I want to make sure that that 3% income that would be coming out of this thing can take care of my four walls, my basic needs, and help me live with dignity. I wouldn't have enough money to probably go and have a lot of fun if I were going for the bare minimum here, but it's important to make sure that I'm able to cover those needs. For the example, we're going to say $45,000 a year is what I'd need to cover my absolute basic minimums. In other words, I wouldn't be comfortable if my income dropped below $45,000 in today's money. So we can take that $45,000, divide it by 0.03, and that will give us $1.5 million. Now that's more than the $1.2 million. So if we want to figure out how much we need to retire with the withdrawal strategy that we picked, we need to take the larger of the two numbers. It means that the 5% withdraw may not be fully necessary. We could probably go somewhere closer to 4 in order to have $60,000 worth of income. Or we raise our default income in retirement and know that we still have the $45,000 minimum in today's money that we can drop to when the market goes bleh. Okay, but we have a target, $1.5 million. That's what we need to retire. And we have an average growth corrected for inflation for a hypothetical portfolio in this example. Together, these two resulting bits of information can be used in a retirement calculator to iteratively solve for how much you need to be saving per month in order to retire with $1.5 million. What we have here is Dave Ramsey's retirement calculator on RamseySolutions.com. For the hypothetical person we're talking about, we're going to say they're 25 and they want to retire at 60. That's not terribly unstandard. We're going to say they don't have anything saved yet. They're just now thinking about retirement. And they want to save $500 a month. That's what they figured. We know that we're going to do an inflation-corrected growth of 7%. And we're going to be looking for a nest egg of $1.5 million in today's money. Unfortunately, $500 a month only gives us $900,000 in today's money at retirement. So we need to up this number a little bit. I ran the numbers earlier, and I know that it's roughly $835 a month that gets us to $1.5 million. And that gives us the bare minimum that we need to be saving for retirement in order to make the plan that we outlined work. We started with the end in mind, and we backtracked to the steps we need to take today to make that end goal a reality. I can't express enough how important it is to start with the end in mind and understand how the nest egg is going to function for you in retirement in the most realistic and conservative hypothetical so that you can be working toward retirement today with full confidence. Confidence that you have a plan that's going to work and confidence that you have a plan that will not expose you to undue risk. But again, this is the bare minimum that we're looking at right here, the $835 a month in order to make the plan work. This is taking the approach that my brother Jordan did to his grades in college, back in the story. It is putting the least amount of effort to get what I would call an A for successfully saving for retirement. It is putting no more resources toward it than is absolutely necessary. Another approach, which would be more like the way that I approached grades in college, would be to dump in as much as we can early on so that if something happens, if life happens, and we need to stop contributing to retirement for any reason, we can do that and still know that we're going to be okay. If you ever hit a point where the amount that you have invested, if you added nothing to it, would grow and hit your target number for retirement, well, that's called coasting financial independence. And that is a beautiful place to be in because you don't have to contribute anything to retirement anymore. It's kind of like me when I would get to finals week in school, and I wouldn't even have to take the final exam if I didn't want to. But I would try my hardest and do my best to take the exam and get a good grade anyway. Similarly here, if we ever hit coasting financial independence, one thing you could do is continue to contribute anyway because, well, we're just trying to build wealth and nobody's ever figured, I just wish I didn't save as much money. I wish I didn't have as much. If we had roughly $135,000 saved in our retirement accounts now, and we didn't add anything to it, we'd hit $1.5 million. So at age 25, for the example that we have, within the confines of this little experiment, $135,000 is the threshold for coasting financial independence. And ultimately, the approach that you take is going to be specific to you and the way that you want to hit retirement. Do you want to target the bare minimum? And if you are coming in under target toward the end, just wait a few years to let the market finish growing it out? Or are you going to be really aggressive early on so that if life happens, you can just pump the brakes on saving for retirement and know that you're still going to be able to retire with dignity and you can deal with what's going on today? I personally can't recommend that you go one way or the other. It's really up to you and the kind of plan that you see for your specific future. Hopefully this main topic didn't leave you with too many questions and it was an educational example that can help you. If you do have questions, though, you can go to HopeFilledFinancial.com and send me a question there. Or go down to the comments if the platform you're listening on has a comment section. Leave me a comment there. We might collect your comment and use it as a question in a future episode. I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Until next week, until next Tuesday, budget bravely and enjoy your hope-filled financial future.